So this is our starter file for the lab exercise that you're going to be doing. Oh, so interesting, huh? So what all I did here was, let me just close this off. Let's close this off. All I did was, if you don't have a HTML previewer, I strongly suggest it. Otherwise, you need to have your local server. If your homework works on the previewer, I'm okay with saying that it works. You don't have to have it working on a remote server or anything like that. It works on the previewer. It should work. So preview HTML. I had to do a plugin for that, but you can preview HTML, and we can send you how the heck to do that. We did this previously, and we get this. All my thing does is I'm making a series of rectangles of different classes. So the class of this rectangle is Alta Vista. The class of this rectangle is Barrhaven, Canada, and Orleans. They have a particular X, Y, width, and height. Okay. Notice the Y coordinate is 75, 70, 30, and 60. What the heck? We'll look at that in a second as well. Why that's the case. Which means you got to do math. So this is me making a bunch of opaque rectangles. The stroke, the outside, is all black for all of them. But we do have something else that I'm going to be. When we add our CSS, the fill for those is going to end up being this. So I have a partway done example as well that we can look at in a second. Actually, let's look at that now. So what I'm doing is I'm starting off with an open file. I make sure I can see something. Points. Okay, I've done nothing special here. I'm just opening up an HTML file. But what we're going to incrementally do is check out another part and another part. So in the SVG section of my HTML, which is in my body, I have this thing, which is just in my SVG, make a rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle, and plop them down there. The SVG itself is a particular height and width. Okay, let's look at the bar chart modified. And I'm going to re-implement or restart this sort of thing. Now I want to look at the, I removed some stuff here. So what if we did this? So here is my CSS. I'm using an external CSS file. So this is my original. Just easier to see it. And let's also see if there's anyone talking in the chat. Hello, things. I want to see if I want to put my chat up if I can. There it is. Okay. So if this is what my modified version of it, let's have a look at what the modified looks like. Once I have this CSS in, this is what I would end up seeing. So preview HTML. And so I'm going to incrementally keep on changing some of these things. And let's make my bar, let's go to my bar chart.css. I'm going to save it and it automatically fixed it for me. So that if the bar chart is of class Barrhaven, it is in the blue steel color. If the bar chart is of type of Orleans, then it's in dark red. This is Orleans. Alta Vista is in green, and Canada is in yellow. And they're just random numbers here right now. But I wanted to show what manually doing all this stuff would look like. Pain in the bum. What we're going to do after that is we're going to read in a document using JavaScript in D3 to read in the data set. It should read in this full data set. So here is my CSV file. There we go. Word number, case for 100,000. The numbers were changed, so don't start panicking if it seems like we have a plague on our hands or something like that. But here is what a bunch of the data looks like. What the word number is, what the name of the ward is. Here is the number of cases per 100,000. Here's the number of cases in the past 20 days per 100,000. cases in the past 14 days per 100,000, cases cumulative, the number of total cases in 30 days, not per 100,000. I think it's raw numbers all the way down. There's a bunch of different dimensions that you can look up at the top. So top here, test 2, test 1. I don't even remember what those values were supposed to be. The long-term care facilities in the past 14 days, long-term care facilities past 30 days. And your job is eventually you're going to use D3 to take this file in and make an equivalent or almost equivalent R chart as this, but it's going to be based on the data itself. I'm not going to be manually coding in these rectangles. This leads us to what D3 does. So I'm hoping I'm not boring people or anything like that with this. Let's have a look at my D3. Where is this? Is just stolen code. I fully admit it is stolen code that I modified. That's half of D3, it seems. Everyone in the community ends up doing this. Somebody writes an example, somebody takes it, modifies it, learns a bunch of stuff, posts that, somebody else takes that, modifies it, learns a bunch of stuff. So in my D3, first of all, I'm going to just set the margins of everything, the visual window that I have there. Then I am going to set the different ranges of my data. This allows me to scale my data so it fits on the screen properly and so it fits in a particular area. So I have a height and a width of my data, and I want to scale linearly scale my data to make values X and Y. This is where these things are going to be positioned. Okay. And then I have this weird thing about D3. So where is it now? I have better examples in other places. And I talk about it in the actual notes. Here's the exit. Here's an append. So this is an enter, and there is no update here yet. This would be an update here. D3 does a weird thing with its data. And let's open up the data stuff. 4, although it might still be just possible visualization. Oh, this is the wrong one. So this is actually what you're going to be working on for the actual homework. Look at my HTML. It's hardly anything in it. I have some style that I put in directly in the CSS. I didn't need to. I can actually put a separate CSS file. And what I want is this is the library, the D3 libraries. And I'm going to put the full HTTPS. I don't want it necessarily local. Sometimes people keep it local, but it is a big JavaScript file that has all the information about D3 in it, all the different code for D3. I've been grabbing the files from other sources, or like for example, for the lab, I've been grabbing the files from the Google Drive, throwing it into a folder, and then opening that folder in Atom. So I might do something like open folder or add project folder. Add project folder is probably the better way of doing it. Add project folder, and then you can see, okay, lab 2 starter. I have a bunch of other labs in here, so I can look at my GeoJSON test. So let's add this to my folder, and I'll see it down here. Everything in the folder is in there. Unlike Visual Studio, where you're manually adding things, and if it's in the folder, it's not. It can be not in the folder, or not in the folder. Yeah, this is if it's in the folder, it's part of the project. Period. Right. So here's me doing the GeoJSON file. So my test page should do it. And then I can preview HTML. I should. There you go. Here is Sledding Hills, I do believe, in approved sites for Sledding Hills and the like in Ottawa. Here's a map of Ottawa. Here is here are the different locations where Sledding Hills occur. Notice I can't necessarily drill in. I could drill into these things here, but maps are a weird thing that we have to work on. Here's approved sites that are conditional, and just plain old approved sites, and there's 32 of them. The actual code itself is here's neighborhood names.json. Here's all the neighborhood names and their shapes for Ottawa. Here is on boundaries generation region. I think I just threw those in there anyways. Ottawa map, the Ottawa map, and the various bounding boxes. Here is Ottawa map, another Ottawa map example. Here are my sledding hill. Here's my sledding hill JSON. So this is this is the data that I'm showing in those little dots. My test page is reading in, this is all Vega Lite, by the way, not D3, but it's reading in a series of Vega Lite scripts. You are saying where the data is coming from. The idea is the auto visualization. Here's the auto map example. .js is the script I'm running. And that thing is, I have described what I want in here. I want everything that is, I look at the sledding hills.json. It's the file that I'm getting from. And what's the format? It's a series of properties with a series of features. I'm going to have my mark as a circle, and I'm going to be positioning those circles on this map. So essentially I say, here's my data. How do I want it to look? I don't worry about the individual data items. With D3, it's slightly different. And yeah, one folder, one project, exactly. So one folder, one project. So everything in that folder is potentially part of that project, or at least viewable and usable by that project. It's looking for sleddinghills.json. And since in the project, it knows it's the local file. It's local to that folder. The issue is going to be, if I have D3, I have a slightly different way of doing things. It's actually a really smart way of doing things. And it's closer to, there's other JavaScript libraries. I'm thinking jQuery does this as well, if anyone knows jQuery. The idea behind D3 is that it has a bunch of different phases. It has an enter phase. So when I have a data set that is coming in, it enters the data is entered. Like the first time I see that data, the D3 knows when it's new data and says, hey, that's the first time I saw that data item. It's in the interface. So any new data that's entering, I deal with the data that way. If the data gets updated, I have an update phase. And so I do different tasks when it's updated. And then I have an exit phase. That's stage 3. So when it enters, when it updates, when it exits, 3 different things. If I go back to my D3 example, bar chart, here's my original. So I have, this is the original starter file. This is a bar a CSS describing what, if there's a rectangle named bar from class Barhaven, make it blue steel as a color. If it's a rectangle from Orleans, make it dark red. I can describe how I should draw, or how I should draw, how I should color, how I should make these things. So the HTML tells me what the thing is. It's a rectangle from class Barhaven, or a rectangle from class Barhaven. If I see a rectangle from class Barhaven, fill it red or blue or green. I could have also put the X and the Y sizes in the CSS. I could have put the width and a height in the CSS. I could have put all of this information that you see here, all of that. Oh, not the class. The X, the width, the height, all of that stuff could have been in my CSS. Perfectly okay. So I just make a rectangle, class Barhaven, and it goes, how do I draw this? And it goes, here's all you need to know how to draw this thing. That probably should do that. D3 does one thing different so here's my D3. It says, okay, I'm going to get a bunch of data. So I'm going to get the COVID Ottawa dataset.csv, comma separated value file, meaning I have commas. Commas are what separate each individual field. So called d3.csv, which means read in this comma separated value file. Then when I have that, honestly, it's then. When I get this, then I'm going to call this blank sort of function. It's called a lambda function, but I'm going to make this function I don't even need a name for it. It's just called function that takes in data. So when this data gets, when this gets made, I get this thing called data, this parameter called data. So it read this in, and I call this function, this function, named function, with a parameter, which is data. For the data, I say for each data element, I'm going to call this function, this random anonymous function. This random anonymous function takes the data and the number of cases per 100,000, and then I'm going to add data plus cases of 100,000 to it. So whatever, I guess this is going to be, I always forget what the heck this is. Will that actually double my data? It shouldn't. It's this data function D is there. For each item, maybe I might even need this. I can look into it if I wanted to. It is one of those things I think I'm not sure if I made this one myself. But for each item, for every bit of data that I have, each data item from that table, I do this. I check to see the field called cases 100K, and then I set the value. The reason it knows what it's doing is because it has this comma separated value with all these titles, things at the top. So here we go. Cases 100K. It knows it's the third field in there. So when I say dot cases 100K, it's 1, 2, 2, 3. It would be 520 for Canada. It's the third field because it's always, this forms a table. If I put it in Excel, you would see it, an Excel table. So I read in my data. That's step 1. And process the data if I need to. I can then also scale my data. I am still just dealing with me reading in the data. So I read in the data, and then I'm also going to scale it. And then everything that is a bar, this is an append operation. This is an up. I guess this is going to be an enter operation because it says enter. But for every single bar, I select all the bars in the SVG file, and then I'm going to take a data set. So I might, if I have new data, I'm going to add new bars to my SVG file. There is new data. If new data comes in, the first time it's all new data, I'm appending all of these rectangles. So I'm going to, all of this data, every single data item, I am going to add a rectangle. So originally I have nothing. And for each data item, I am adding one rectangle. Data-driven documents. So for just take my file and I just say, for every one of your data items, do this. I don't deal with it with a for loop on a one by one basis. I just say, for all of my data, do this. So every time there's new data that comes in, do this. I'm going to append a rectangle to my SVG, add a rectangle, and then I'm going to set a particular attribute, what it is. It's going to be get the attribute bar. And bars are drawn a particular way. I'm also going to set the attribute for what the X value is, what the width is, what the height is, what the Y value is. If a data item gets removed, every data item that gets removed from this, every bar that gets removed, when it exits, I might do something. In this case, I don't really do anything. When those data items are removed, I just remove it. But I could have it animate out when it's exiting. I'm also going to add an x-axis or an x-axis, and potentially I would add a y-axis if I wanted to do that. I think I actually do have a y-axis. Class x-axis. There's my y-axis here. So I appended or attached on an x-axis, and I attach on a y-axis. So when the file comes in, the first time I read it in, I add a whole bunch of rectangles, I add an x-axis, I add a y-axis. And I'm talking a lot, so let's do this. I want. Start. There you go. So every piece of data, I make a rectangle at a particular position. Every single, and it has certain attributes. My CSV file, I guess I didn't put it as a separate file in this particular example, but if it's a bar and it's labeled as class bar, then I make a blue steel, a steel blue. And if I label it as a large bar, I make it red. So I color it differently depending on what kind of data I have. And that's effectively all I'm doing is and I can play around with the starter file because I have a modified starter file as well. I'm just drawing it differently depending on the circumstances based off the CSS tells me how it looks. The JavaScript changes things. So when the data comes in, it does one thing. When the data leaves, it does something else. When the data gets updated, it does a third thing. Enter, exit, update. And then I have my HTML, which essentially just gives me the structure. It gives me the model, the data. I want to get out of the way because I don't think I'm explaining it quite as well as I want it to. I think maybe reading the lab instructions might help a little bit, but I want to go over other examples when people get confused. I just need to see where people get confused. So start working on it. It's incremental. We're just doing it a little bit at a time. And when you get it one part working, then you move on to the next part. Don't just try and jump ahead and make this sort of thing. We're going to add a CSS file. Then we're going to add the JavaScript. Then we're going to add a button. Then we're going to add the actions, what happens when you click the button. Just to see it. And I'm going to mute. Great question. I don't think we actually had you have to pass in this lab. It was more, I wanted you guys to play with it so that you could do the assignment. Whether you do it or not, if you want to just skip ahead and just say dive into the homework and you get stuck, I'm okay with that being your choice, but I don't think it's, it doesn't need to be passed in or anything. No one's grading it or anything. It's meant to be an exercise to get you more comfortable with D3. That's more like it. If I want to just reload this one, I think I need to close it off again. I don't have it automatically toggling or anything like that. I kept it simple. Here is my preview of. Hopefully this can work. Let's see. Here is a preview of my what should be, I do believe, my final chart. What we're going to get for the final solution. So anything that is a large value is in red. Anything else below a certain threshold is in blue. They have a different, they're different label to the bar, and therefore it's drawn differently, different class. But when I press show 14 days, I'm going to change my data set. I'm going to call an animated transition on my data set, which you have also access to the final solution, by the way, in case you want to look at it. If you don't get that far, I'll change my animated transition. And again, I'll have a different threshold for what I label as something that's, problematic numbers. And that would be my update call if I wanted to look at my update call or chart.js, the window thing. So if the trigger transition call is made from the button, I press the button. On a button click, call this function. Here's a function. I'm going to select all my rectangles. I'm going to change my data. So get all my data, transition it over a particular duration, and I'm going to change my attributes according to this. And depending on if it's above a bad case or not, I'm going to label it as a bar large or a bar. That's what the class is going to be. It's either going to be bar large or bar. And then I'm going to change my attribute for the y coordinate. I'm going to change my attribute for the height. And then in the process, it will automatically transition to that height and that width and that y position and that color over a 500, presumably millisecond animation. So half a second animation, just transition everything over. And HTML. This would also do it. Any change. And this, by the way, I don't mean to have covered this many times, but this is actually I do believe this is what the homework will end up looking like afterwards, which is I have a bunch of circles of different diameters using D3 to actually draw them. And most of the D3 code is given to you. It's just a matter of modifying it and doing a little bit at a time, just in case you screw something up and you miss a semicolon, everything will go away otherwise. So I think a little bit at a time is always a good thing. trying to find a good example of where things really screwed up with something simple like capital C instead of lowercase c. And I get this. Everything goes away. For something so simple. All right. So I can, let me see here. So you did all the steps. You had the magic chart before that. It just didn't go to the D3, right?
Yeah, I had the small chart with like the 4 bars, and then I counted it out for the next step.
Okay. Let's try. I don't know the easiest way of doing this. So let's see if I can reproduce this with the starter code. Why not? Okay, so we're going to re-add this thing. Um, I don't want to re-add the other one, but that's weird. Because this thing is still not commented out. Okay. Um, So you're not getting that action at all, right?
Yeah,
So
there's nothing, but it looks like there's like a space for it because like my button moved, but there's nothing showing up.
did you have the button there yet already?
Yeah, yeah. It
Okay,
doesn't
because
do anything, but
yeah, it
I
shouldn't
put
do
it
anything
there.
at all. I didn't know if the button was supposed to be there first or not. I forget which order I put things in. I walked through the steps myself, but so the next question is, it wouldn't be your CSS that would be causing the problems. It might be, double check that you have this line here. Oh darn, I just got rid of my own thing. Let me just close this off and don't save. Double check that your initial D3 stuff is in there. And
Yeah, I have that stuff.
you're doing barchart.js, right? And it's called barchart.js, exactly that.
Yes. Yeah.
And did you modify barchart.js?
No.
So it looks exactly like this.
Yes. Yeah, and I have the COVID Ottawa um in the same folder.
Okay.
It's not that.
So you have the CSV file and it looks like that. You have this JS. The issue is, of course, it went to nothing, right?
Yeah, there's just nothing.
Yeah, which is everyone's favorite, gold standard for crappiness of an interface is you get no feedback when things go wrong. So it's fun in the way that's not fun. Actually, I'll move it over. All right, so let's just, oh, that killed it nicely. Right, things like that where I added an SVG part section and it's not supposed to be there. Do it. And if I get rid of it, it should come roaring back. It should come roaring back. What the heck happened? So I'm in the body. That should be fine now. Damn, I think I just broke mine. Good times. Oh, yeah, I literally just broke mine. That's awesome. Where is mine? JS script. Okay. Honest to God, this is. All right. That. Wow. Oh, this is gonna be bad. All right. Okay. It turns out that turning it off and on again sometimes works. Uh, we may have another issue, a potential bug with our thing. So my suggestion, why don't you, well, we're going to double check your HTML, but why don't you close off your HTML, the HTML file, reopen it, re-preview it again and see if that made the difference first.
Okay. Yeah, I'm using Sublime as well, and I'm just like testing it on Chrome.
Okay. Oh, then
Would
you
that
that
do anything?
won't work at all, though. The reason it won't work, so that's a great point to bring up. Have you tried running anything with JavaScript from Chrome before?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, I don't know how you could though.
Yeah, I definitely did last year.
Yeah, because you would have to run you'd have to run a local server unless Chrome added extra extensions on it. It
Oh
will
yeah,
not.
wait, maybe I have JavaScript turned off. I can check.
It's not even turned off. It will not let you run it locally. You have to fake it and pretend it's on a server. That's what that local server thing that in Python was for. Is that Chrome doesn't allow you to run local files, local JavaScript files. If you get it from a server, you're fine. But if it's from your local computer, like a local file, it won't let you do it. It's a
Okay.
security issue. So Firefox will allow you to do it. If you're using Atom, you can preview it. If you're using Sublime, I think you can preview it. But Chrome, I don't think it allows you to do it. Neither will Safari or Internet Explorer. It's a security thing. Chrome is starting to. They finally figured out how to patch it so that you can't exploit the various things you can do by running JavaScript code locally. So essentially, it would be grab a cookie and run this executable code on your system without grabbing it from another web page, and it leads to weird ways you can exploit people, as far as I understand.
Okay. I'll try that.
So if you can run it in Atom or run it on Sublime directly and preview it there, because I don't think the JavaScript's going to execute, is what the issue is.
Okay. Yeah, because I know I did before, but it wasn't anything too wild. It was like change this picture when you click this button. But like it worked in Chrome.
It worked in Chrome and it was changed the picture when you push this button. It was JavaScript,
Yeah, yeah, it was a JavaScript file.
and then it should. It was one of those things I was shocked when I found out myself that there's limited things you can do in JavaScript. You can also look at your JavaScript itself. Let's see if I have a nice JavaScript example. And I could actually have a bunch of tools, developer tools, and I can actually let's right click. Oh, it won't let me do that here. Let's try. All right. So I should be able to inspect the actual component. And you can also look at that as well. Because if you get any kind of error, you'll see like an error message in here somewhere. It'll be tagged. And that also tells you if you're not able to run the file or not.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm relying on people using Atom. I was assuming people were going to use Atom. I know that you don't have to, but it's what I know, and therefore and since I don't have Sublime, it's like it did stuff. By the way, I know that labs are not exactly the most exciting thing in the world via Zoom. I just want to point out in the past, normally I would be right there walking around helping people out as they go in. And I'm not going to be, if your friends have all taken off from the lab, if you know anyone that's already taken off from the lab, uh, if they hit problems with D3 later, I'm not going to necessarily be able to help them in time before the homework deadline. That's the reason we have this. So thank you for staying around, and please ask questions as they come up. If your friends are going to get stuck with D3, you might want to remind them when they get stuck. I can still try and help, but I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to time it properly. Why do we have a lab? And Phil, I think your microphone's on.
You're right. My bad. Hey, I have a question.
Yep.
I was just messing around with like the D3 thing with the heights,
Mhm.
and I see how it kind of just switches, like it's going from the bottom of the top to the top to the bottom. But I'm just kind of like I don't really get the math that's going on there. I'm not really sure.
Ah, great. So let me see if I can pull that up. What the actual code looks like. Okay, so here's my data. Here's my interface where I'm appending everything, and then I have this y height, and okay, so this is the y position. So that's a scaled value. So I have this y thing this is me taking any given data. It's a scaled value from any given height. So the height of the thing should be this thing right here. Yeah, and it's a 0. Okay. That is a range between height and 0. So, okay. So what I want, so how do I want to phrase this? You can consider this whole thing, this part up here, just some kind of scale factor. So that is not the critical part, the part that's very confusing. This part though, height minus this value here. So let's pretend that our, let me see here. Oh, I have this already done, so I can just throw that in there. Boom. The y value is just always this value up here. And then I'm drawing the height, which is going downwards,
Yeah.
right? Because 0 is up at the top. And this is by convention from way back in the day with old cathode ray tubes and all this kind of stuff. Computer scientists ended up picking up the idea of we're going to, instead of, there's no real point to starting from the bottom going to the top or starting from the top to the bottom. It's the same. It's just a relative coordinate frame. So whether by convention, progress goes to the right, so to speak, as some of the metaphors that we use in society, there's no reason for that.
Yeah.
So in this case, our 0 is at the top, and our position that we put things is at wherever that position is, and our height is always down from that point. So now I need to do the math to reverse that. And so what I do here is I am, for my y position, I'm going to, there's a mapping between, let me see here. It's going from height to 0. And so this should be, let me see here. This will figure out where this baseline should be. Let me see here. That'll figure out what the top point is, the y position for all of these things. So this line right here, it's one of those things that drives me a little nuts too, and I have to look it up each time. This line right here that I'm highlighting is you're going to find out where this position is on this between here and here, where it's going to be mapping to. So essentially where I should be, where the top of my bar is. That's where the y position is. And
Yeah.
then the rest of it is the rest of the total height minus, so all the way down, minus whatever the remaining part is. So essentially I am filling in the exact opposite of this. This bar goes down to here. I am going to say from here down to here is where I'm going to be putting things. Even I can't quite explain it the way I wanted to. I have it in my head, but it's kind of hard to articulate. So the first value is the y position is where this bar is going to start. And then the rest of it is, it's going to go all the way to the height, which is down here, minus where this point is. And that's how long this bar has to be. This thing is calculating the difference, I guess, from here to here. That's what the height value that it's storing is. What this lookup here is doing, it's going from height to 0. And so if I put in a value, it's just going to sort of flip it around. But it's
So if I'm understanding you correct, like height is from the top would be 0
Mhm.
down to wherever the bar would go. And that's the value. And then the Y is the actual inverse of it, like when it's an actual bar chart.
The Y
you get
is
what-
that where my mouse is right here, is that's the Y position where I'm
Yeah.
starting my bar. And I need to that is being calculated by doing sort of the inverse.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I do the math to get the size of the bar. I do the total height minus whatever that inverse amount was to give me how much is left. So this is height. This entire thing is height. The Y position is get the inverse of the Y position. That's what that scale factor is doing. It's going from height to 0 instead of 0 to height. So inverse.
Okay.
So this is going to be the inverse. And so when I give it a value of just say 600, right, I will get whatever the height minus 600 is, or whatever that value is. So the position for my Y value is going to be the inverse, what I'm storing in the system. You don't see it, but that's what it's storing. And then how big the bar is the height minus that value.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think I get it.
It's just bonkers math for no reason.
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah, it's the reverse. The 0 in the top left is kind of messing with me. Okay. I think I get it.
But it's not natural for people to, normally people find ways to work around it. That's why they have this kind of thing. Because
Yeah.
once you have this design pattern, you just reapply it the next time.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Sure, I can show my CSS. Let me see. This is what I was, this is one of the things I could use. That's my starter file, because I'm not using my CSS yet. Here is the final. Oh, no, there's my final CSS. I didn't know which one you wanted. The final, which is just a bunch of blue steel. And if it's an extremely large bar, I can make it dark red. Or did you want the other one, Tori? Ah, and for those, for if you're wanting to know how the heck I do that if statement, uh, let me get out of the way then. So if you need how that if statement works, what you have is you should be able to use hex values. I always have to look up the syntax for it. There's this particular syntax for the fill, and then you use a hex color, so it's 0x and a bunch of other things I do believe, and then your RGB values afterwards, I think, but I would look it up each time. You couldn't tell, I don't program in D3 professionally. Like I programmed in C and C++ professionally for years. I programmed in Java for years. I programmed Android for years. I never programmed D3 for years, just like little toy projects. So you don't get the full depth that you get from like, hey, I worked on this for 4 years, right? You really know your stuff at that point in time. All right, let me show the JavaScript just to show you what that if statement looks like. It should be in there. Where's my jet? Where's the if statement? Oh, that's my starter file. Show this. So, yeah, I'm muted. Okay, so let's have a look at if you want to figure out what the heck this if statement is doing. Here, I'm taking my attribute. I have a particular class. I'm seeing with an if statement, I can see if this the attribute, and if so when I'm setting my class, in this case, this is me updating, I can check to see if the data coming in, I'm going to see if the value is above a certain amount. If so, I'm returning this. The class, when I'm setting the class, it's either going to be returning bar large or bar. That's what's going to be returned from this function right here. The attribute call, the attribute function call says set the class. What do I set it to? I could just hard code a value in here, but in this case, I'm going to take the data and determine what I return, what I'm going to set it to based on the data. So I run this anonymous function, essentially, this Lambda function, without it doesn't have a name, it just this unnamed function. Indeed, with the unnamed stranger. Anyways, anonymous stranger. Anyways, I have a particular function. All it does is it takes in some kind of data D. It figures out what the heck D is and will give me a return of different value depending on it. So it could be returning a number, it could be returning strings, it could be returning whatever the heck I want, because JavaScript doesn't care. You can do all sorts of stupid things. So in this case, it's saying, hey, if the data that you have here, if it's cases of 100,000 in the last 30 days, the number of cases of COVID per 100,000 in the past 30 days, if that rate is above the bad rate that I've recorded down somewhere, bad rate should be here somewhere. Bad rate 1500. I've set my bad rate. If it's above the bad rate, then I'm going to make it a large bar. And if it's not above the bad rate, then I'm just going to make it a bar. Similarly, if I have an if statement here, if this is above the bad rate, or I can put another value in there, bar large, otherwise bar. Nice. Because in this case, that's a great question, Isaac. So in this case, when I click the button for transitioning, so I think, yeah, this, I'm not seeing, this is not what my preview is showing. When I click that button for triggering a transition, I change what data set I'm going to be looking at. And so my values, I'm now using the cases per 100,000 in the past 30 days, case per past 30 days. Before, I was just using the number of cases in the past per 100,000. And so before I was checking cases per 100,000 and calling the bar accordingly. And now I'm checking the cases per 100,000 in the past 30 days and seeing if it's above a particular threshold. I've changed my data. I need to relabel my classes depending on what kind of data it is. So let's say I had a long-term care home rate. When I change my data, I go from like number of cases per 100,000 to number of cases in long-term care homes. The coloring should be completely different in that case. So I'm going to change what class, what the kind of class I have, depending on the kind. Or I can change the what some other attribute, like we have classes, and we also had, what was the other thing? Not tags. You use the hashtag to represent it. Anyways, I could change one of the attributes for each of the bars. I check to see if it should be colored one way or another way, and I set the kind of bar it is based on by the data. And then let CSS figure it out. So when I label this as a large bar, it gets drawn red. The JavaScript doesn't need to do anything. The CSS goes, oh, it's a large bar large. I'm going to draw it red. Otherwise, I'm going to draw blue. And that's what we end up seeing. So how you draw it should be determined by the CSS. How you label things, or how things are, what kind of attributes you have, that's determined by the JavaScript. And this whole idea of this thing is I can change any of the attributes, X, Y, width, height, all of these things, depending on what my data looks like. So I could make it that it's transparent if the values are really high, or I could make it so that I have, it converts from a rectangle and turns into a circle even. I mean, I can change what happens. And that happens when I update this is an update. So I get all my data, all my rectangles. I see if I transition the data, I change my data, and then I'm going to change my class dependingly, and then everything will transition from there. But there's some really, I'll see if I can find it. There's some really badass Some really cool stuff. I want the examples though. I just want to see them. There's some pretty ones. Grow. No, I don't want that. Let's see this. There's one in particular I wanted to see. That's all. That will do it. Jeez. I love this stuff. It's really intimidating. Right. More this. Animated transitions. Where I have a bunch of ticks and I can update and change things. There you go. So here's my update function in case, let's see, make sure I'm unmuted. Okay, here's my update function. I am doing a merge operation. This is an update. Appending together a bunch of text into here. Let me see here. And then I'm transitioning to this. So my X value is going to change based on some kind of lookup table, I do believe. And then I put it in a loop. So put the timeout. I do a number of events and I'll loop around again. Where's my, here's set time function. So I call my own function back again. Not that easy, but let's just fall in love with why you might need to set things multiple times. I can set the X attribute every couple seconds with a loop. And I don't actually manually control any of those things. I just say, okay, you're just going to transition now. And it transitions to some other position. But that's me setting the attribute using the transformation. easier to unmute here. The solution is already available to you. It's so you, there's a big code repository that I gave to everybody. I do believe it's in a Google Drive. It's in CU Learn as well. You should have direct access to the entire code repository for Atom. If you want, I can just share it right now. You will not get homework 4 code until afterwards. I disabled viewing of it. Link, okay. That's also on CU Learn. And so the lab 2 is actually the solution file. Lab 2 starter is the one. Also, the cycling demo is also something you can look at, and GeoJSON is something you can look at for your later projects so that you can actually, you have maps of Ottawa, but I've already found somewhere else and converted over. Nope, just guided tutorial for homework, just to help you with homework 4. That's it. Oh yeah, it's 11:50. So yeah, if you can take off anytime you want, just keep me informed. Especially notice that you guys are here, so I appreciate all your hard work. Just if you hit any snags with homework 4, if you haven't finished it yet and you hit any snags, let me know. I'm not wanting. I don't want to be I'm a real stickler. I'm a real jerk when it comes to 1400 and 2400 because the point of the course is programming, not the point of this course, right? This is about designing a visualization, and there is a coding aspect, but it's not the crux to the course. So we can be generous about this sort of thing. Just let me know if you get into any problems, right? It's not meant to keep you. I had grad students panicking last term because they didn't program before. They took the course for some reason without knowing how to program at all, and they just, well, what is this? And you're like, okay, well, we chill them out a little bit because it's not the point of the course. So let me know if there's something that gets in the way or if you trip on anything. But I'm not going to be, you're a minute late, you get 0. No, we're not doing any of that this term for this class. Don't worry, you'll get that again from me in 2400. But for this term and this class, you can be. JavaScript is scary as hell. And yet people swear by it. All these people are like, oh, I love JavaScript. I'm like, why? It's just dangerous. You do one thing wrong and everything just blows up in your face. It drives me batty. And like, oh, is it a string? No, I'm going to decide it to be an integer today. Like, no. I like strongly typed languages that can find where the error is. C is also scary, but JavaScript just terrifies me. So you're in good company. So just a quick recap again. Anytime you want to take off, let's see, was chill until I stop being just math. Oh, with the double array, the 2D arrays and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm gonna probably teach 2D arrays, but I'm not gonna be putting on exams and the like. But we have other students panicking nicely about C right now, so I'm trying to figure out. That's what I was doing while you guys were working here. I'm trying to design an how-to guide to program for people that have never programmed before, because it's scary until you realize it's not that crazy. It's just step-by-step instructions, and how you break down a big problem is what we're focusing on. So, out of curiosity, Kara, what was so scary? Was there a particular topic that scared you with the C course? Pointers?
Oh, it was fine. I think it was like at the end, partly because it was online.
Oh yeah.
But like the storage stuff, I didn't really understand any part of that.
Oh, you mean arrays or
No, it was like I don't even know well, I couldn't tell you.
That's how you purged it from your brain, huh?
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Something about like storing things temporarily and then getting rid of it, or I don't even know.
Oh, I gotta slow down on that part then. Thank you. That's why I ask. You meant temporary variables versus like if you have dynamic memory, it doesn't it stays with you, and if you make a static array, it automatically gets given back to the system as soon as the function is done.
Yeah, that.
That thing, yeah, that old chestnut. Okay, yeah, there's no
And there
avoiding it,
was
but
there
we
was
can.
something else. Oh, it was. I remember like an assignment about like reading a CSV file or something like that, and I didn't know how to do that either.
Okay.
So like the first half was really chill.
I'm trying to be chill about the first half because I don't want to terrify students. We still get students who go, "Oh, I've never programmed before." I'm like, I told you all the instructions, but yeah, people get in their own way sometimes as well. But yeah, I kind of slow down that last half as well. We will do the CSV file again in 2400, but I'm trying to make it easier and easier each time. But it's just reading in a file, right? And that's what D3 is actually doing. It's reading in a CSV file and just pulling off the next token in this file. It's doing it for you. So it is scary.
Yeah, I liked the part of C where it was just like problem solving, and like it was just like doing math, but with limited things you could do. I don't know, like that was chill.
Yeah, when you're
It's
only
more like,
doing a loop, it's pretty chill. If you're doing fancier things, that's where I need these instructions, I think, where big nasty problems are actually not big nasty problems. There are a whole bunch of little simple chill things. You just need to approach it that way.
yeah, I might have just like lost motivation by the end.
Yeah.
I also had like, I don't know, I think it was like you marked all of the assignments except for like our two lowest. So by then I had like done everything I needed to do.
But then it pops up on the exam. But
I know
yeah.
I tried though. I tried.
Oh, and then you're good. If you tried
I
it,
put
you
in an
passed
effort.
anyway.
I put in an effort and then I stopped because like, it was just making me too upset.
Good feedback, good to know, and good things that I can work on. It's one of those you never know until you talk to somebody where you either get people really panicked and by that point in time it's too late because they spend all that time building themselves up, or you find out after the effect. But I have to be constantly on my guard to figure out where people get stuck. So that's very useful feedback.
Okay, I'm glad I can help.
Yeah. I mean, it's when I used to teach math, and I'm not a mathematician, so I knew exactly where people tripped up. This is one of the few things I'm actually good at in life, and so it's a weird sensation to like, what do you mean you don't get this? Oh, it's just this is one thing I have an aptitude for is programming. It's not exceptional by any stretch, but it's the one thing I'm better at than like math or reading or writing or things like that. And so I don't know where people trip up for once. In math, I know exactly where they trip up because I tripped over it 4 times. I know where you're going to trip up in JavaScript because I tripped over it 4 times. But in terms of like how to write a function, I don't know where people screw up. So it's really, really useful. Thanks. Okay. It is 11:57, so you can go and have your lunch whenever you want. If there's anyone else that's left on the call. Oh, just the two of us. Hi, Andy. Everyone else took off on you, Kara. But anyways, bye. I'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys. And I'll try and post these videos as well. Thanks.